Real manipulation does not begin with a dramatic demand or open hostility. It begins with something so small you almost feel embarrassed for noticing it, a comment that lingers a second too long, a joke that lands just slightly off, a favor that quietly assumes your time without asking. These micro-violations slide under your conscious radar because they are designed to look harmless. You brush them off, tell yourself it is nothing, and move on. But in that tiny moment, a line was tested. Most people imagine predators as loud, aggressive, and easy to spot. In reality, obvious aggression is predictable and therefore easier to defend against. The more dangerous figure is the calibrated manipulator who understands the compliance threshold, the precise point where you will tolerate discomfort to avoid conflict. They do not push hard. They apply just enough pressure to see if you flinch. If you do not, they log the data. If you do, they retreat and reframe. Either way, they learn exactly how much resistance you can offer. Before that first test ever happens, something else is carefully built. Psychologists sometimes call this grooming the baseline. The manipulator creates an atmosphere of safety, warmth, and alignment. Your nervous system relaxes. Amygdala activity lowers because nothing appears threatening. They mirror your values, validate your feelings, and establish familiarity. This is not random kindness. It is calibration. The safer you feel, the less likely you are to interpret a small boundary breach as intentional. Picture this. Someone teases you about a personal insecurity in front of others, then laughs and says, "Relax, I am kidding." Or they borrow something without asking and call it forgetfulness. You feel a flash of discomfort, then confusion. Did that just happen? Am I overreacting? The moment passes, but your body registered it. That brief cognitive freeze, that split second of self-doubt, is exactly the response they were measuring. Those early transgressions are not accidents. They are low-risk reconnaissance missions. Each subtle move gathers intelligence about your self-respect, your confrontation style, and your tolerance for ambiguity. If you minimize it, they escalate slightly. If you question it, they soften and reassure. Over time, they build a psychological map of you. And by the time the real demand arrives, the groundwork has already been laid beneath your awareness. The real power of covert manipulation lies in plausible deniability. Every move is engineered to be explainable, dismissible, and socially defensible. If you react, you risk looking dramatic. If you stay silent, they gain ground. They create situations where your discomfort has no clear evidence trail. There is no obvious insult, no explicit demand, just a subtle shift that makes you question your own perception. The genius of it is that the burden of proof quietly falls on you. At a micro-relational level, this is the foot-in-the-door technique in action. It starts with something minor, a small inconvenience, a tiny compromise, a brief delay of your own needs. You tell yourself it is not worth making a big deal over, but neurologically your brain registers that you complied. Once you have conceded once, you are statistically more likely to concede again. Each small yes rewires the pathway toward a larger one. What felt insignificant becomes the first brick in a much heavier structure. Social conditioning makes this process even smoother. From childhood, most people are trained to be polite, agreeable, and easy to get along with. We are rewarded for accommodation and punished for disruption. Manipulators understand this instinctively. They rely on your desire to appear reasonable. The fear of being labeled difficult often overrides the instinct to protect yourself. In that hesitation, your natural defense system is muted by the need to maintain social harmony. During this testing phase, warmth and pressure alternate rapidly. One moment they push a boundary, the next, they shower you with attention, praise, or affection. This is intermittent reinforcement, a powerful conditioning loop. The emotional contrast creates confusion. You hesitate to label the behavior as harmful because the kindness feels real. The inconsistency keeps you off balance, preventing you from forming a stable defensive posture. You are busy recalibrating instead of resisting. All the while, they are observing. How long does it take you to recover from discomfort? Do you confront directly, joke it off, or withdraw? Do you need external validation before speaking up? Your recovery time becomes their metric. Your confrontation style becomes their strategy guide. With each boundary test, they refine their calculations. By the time the violations grow more serious, they already know your tolerance range with unsettling precision. When a manipulator's charming persona suddenly clashes with a subtle boundary violation, your brain is forced into cognitive dissonance. Two conflicting realities collide. This person feels safe, yet something feels wrong. Resolving that conflict is not just emotional, it is metabolically expensive. The brain burns additional glucose trying to reconcile the inconsistency. Instead of immediately labeling the behavior as a threat, it searches for a story that preserves the original positive image. That mental negotiation drains clarity in real time. Deep inside the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex acts as a conflict detector. It scans for social anomalies, mismatches between words and tone, between warmth and disrespect. When it detects inconsistency, it sends a signal that something is off. Covert manipulators overwhelm this system by delivering highly mixed cues, affection paired with dismissal, praise wrapped around subtle criticism. The overload creates noise in the signal. Instead of a clear alarm, you experience vague unease. Ironically, the human brain often perceives open confrontation as a more immediate threat than quiet psychological intrusion. Social rejection historically meant danger to survival. So when faced with the choice between calling out a subtle violation or preserving connection, many people default to the fawn response. They smooth things over, laugh it off, accommodate. This is not weakness. It is a deeply wired survival reflex prioritizing group cohesion over internal discomfort. During the initial bonding phase, dopamine and oxytocin are released through shared experiences, validation, and emotional intimacy. Dopamine reinforces reward and anticipation. Oxytocin strengthens trust and attachment. Together, they create a powerful sense of closeness. These chemicals function like a biological anesthetic. When a boundary is crossed later, the existing bond softens the perceived severity. Your nervous system hesitates to categorize the person as a threat because the chemistry says they are safe. Over time, constant low-grade boundary testing accumulates stress in the body. This is where allostatic load enters the picture. The nervous system remains on subtle alert, even when nothing overtly dramatic is happening. Chronic ambiguity forces your brain to continuously monitor for danger while also maintaining the relationship. That dual demand exhausts executive functioning, weakens impulse control, and reduces your capacity to enforce limits. Resistance requires energy, and manipulation is designed to slowly drain it. The shift from testing to exploitation rarely feels dramatic. It feels gradual, almost logical. A joke that once felt slightly uncomfortable becomes a regular public put-down. A small favor turns into an expectation. The tone changes, but so slowly you barely register it. One day you realize you are apologizing for things you did not do, rearranging your schedule to prevent their irritation, managing their emotions like they are your responsibility. The line was crossed long ago, but it happened in inches, not miles. By this stage, the sunk cost fallacy tightens its grip. You have invested time, energy, identity. You have defended them to friends. You have explained away red flags. Walking away would mean admitting that your earlier concessions were not harmless. So the mind chooses consistency over truth. It tells you the situation is complicated, that every relationship has flaws, that you just need to communicate better. The more you have given, the harder it becomes to reclaim what is left. A more dangerous shift begins internally, gaslighting the self. You start preemptively adjusting your behavior to avoid conflict. You silence your own needs before they are even expressed. When discomfort arises, you question your perception instead of their behavior. Their narrative becomes your internal voice. You call yourself sensitive, dramatic, ungrateful. Over time, you no longer need them to cross your boundaries. You cross them for them, just to keep the peace. Isolation often starts in subtle ways. They create small crises that require your immediate attention. They express disappointment when you prioritize friends or family. They frame your independence as disloyalty. At first it feels like proof of closeness, proof that you matter. Gradually, your world narrows. Support systems weaken because you are constantly managing their emotional weather. What once were healthy connections begin to feel like obstacles to maintaining stability. This is the boiling frog effect in real time. The temperature rises so slowly you adapt to each new level of discomfort. The baseline of acceptable behavior shifts without announcement. What would have once felt unacceptable now feels normal. The question is not whether something extreme happened. The question is whether your definition of respect has quietly eroded. If the answer is yes, the transition from testing to exploitation is already complete. A boundary is not a wall meant to keep people out. It is a biological feedback system. That first flicker of discomfort in your chest, that tightness in your stomach, that brief mental pause, those are not flaws in your personality. They are signals. Highly evolved, deeply intelligent signals. When someone tests a limit, your body knows before your mind forms the words. The mistake is not feeling discomfort. The mistake is overriding it in the name of politeness. One powerful strategy is neutral observation. Instead of reacting emotionally or immediately defending yourself, step back internally. Treat the interaction like data collection. What exactly was said? What changed in tone? What happened right before and right after the boundary was crossed? This shift from personal hurt to analytical curiosity interrupts the manipulator's advantage. You are no longer trapped inside the emotional fog. You are observing patterns, not absorbing them. Then comes what can be called a hard boundary reset. Calmly, briefly, and without excessive explanation, you reinforce a small limit. Not aggressively, not apologetically, just clearly. The goal is not to control them. The goal is to observe their reaction. A healthy person adjusts. A covert manipulator often escalates, minimizes, or suddenly intensifies charm. This spike in behavior is known as an extinction burst, a last attempt to regain control when the old tactic stops working. Rebuilding self-trust requires honesty without shame. You may recognize moments where you ignored your instincts or collapsed a boundary. That awareness is not evidence of weakness, it is evidence of learning. Each time you acknowledge a missed signal and respond differently next time, you rewire your threat detection system. The brain adapts quickly when given consistent feedback. Self-respect is strengthened through repetition, not perfection. True psychological autonomy is not the fantasy of eliminating all manipulators from your life. That is unrealistic. Autonomy is having an internal protocol that cannot be hacked. You notice the first subtle violation. You trust the signal. You test with clarity. And if necessary, you disengage without drama. Power is not in control over others. It is in your ability to detect and neutralize incursions the moment they appear.